When I went to see Edmund, I came across a post on a social media account. My daily life with my doctor crush. The ambiguous chat records drew a lot of fans' ant-like smiles. Until I scrolled to the latest post, 2 minutes ago. The blogger and her crush were wearing doctor's overall, smiling at each other with perfect understanding. The comment section went crazy. If this isn't love, then what is? Get together quickly. I've even moved the bed for you. 2 minutes have passed. Have you registered? Gotten married? Had kids? Help, this is too sweet. Please, God, give me a doctor boyfriend too. But this face, one I would recognize even if it turned to ashes, who else could it be but Edmund Williams? I calmly saved all the posts. The day I left, Edmund asked me, "How long will my little girlfriend be away this time?" He thought I was going on an international tour again. This time, I didn't reply to him. Since he has fell for others, from now on, we will have nothing to do with each other, and nothing to do with love and romance. Ding! This novel reminds you to click the subscribe button in the bottom right corner to read the complete novel. I dragged my suitcase with one hand and held a basketball in the other. It had the autograph of Edmund's favorite player. The blogger's location was this private restaurant, just next to the hospital where Edmund was interning. Mealtime was long over, leaving only a few people in the private rooms. Oh, you guys stop joking. Dr. Williams and I are really just good friends. A soft female voice came from not far away, with a hint of shy embarrassment. Although she said not to joke, her tone was very ambiguous. The people present seemed to understand and kept encouraging them. Don't say that. The few times you made mistakes during the night shift, you asked Edmund to clean up for you, right? Exactly. People in other departments are all gossiping about your relationship. Brave people enjoy love first, Yvonne. Stop hesitating, Edmund is very popular. But I remember Dr. Williams already has a girlfriend, right? I subconsciously bit my lip, for a moment actually thinking the person being asked would choose to deny it on the spot. Yes. It was Edmund's voice. A bit low. He had allergic rhinitis, which always flared up during season changes. So every time my international tour ended, the first thing I did was help him find medicine for his rhinitis. Hearing his affirmation, I couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. Maybe I was really overthinking it, maybe that girl was just one-sidedly infatuated. The room suddenly fell silent. No way, there's really no chance with you and Yvonne? I've been with my girlfriend for almost 7 years, we're long used to each other. Once I settle down here, we will get married. Edmund continued to smile. Our Yvonne is a good girl, but I don't deserve her. 2 people should be together because they like each other. How can habit count as love? Do you not have any feelings for me? What if I had met you first? The voice, choked with sobs, was full of grievance and unwillingness. It felt like a century passed before I finally heard the familiar voice. Maybe. But there's no what if. Maybe. But there's no what if. I stood outside the door. I wanted to cry, but couldn't. I found it funny, but couldn't laugh. Every word that came out of Edmund's mouth felt like a slap, leaving me speechless. We have been together for nearly 7 years, from the best age of 18 to now. We have walked through every fallen leaf in the medical school and smelled every osmanthus fragrance in the music school. We have met each other's parents, and even our wedding room has been decided. He held me under the sky full of fireworks and cried, whispering in my ear over and over again. Studying medicine is dull and arduous, and I was his only faith all these years. But when did this relationship start to become so forced for him? Even making him think, it's a pity there's no what if. Right now, I don't know if I should go in and confront him or break up with him directly. I also can't understand why. Why that boy who, 7 years ago, chose to study medicine just because I said, I like having a boyfriend who is a doctor. While caring for me every day, he could also be so attentive to another girl. It rarely snows in H City. I walked aimlessly along the roadside, seeing only red car lights everywhere. The road that was clear and smooth on the way here, how did it suddenly become so congested? Clearly thinking everything was progressing smoothly and happily towards the future. How did it suddenly become untenable? I still remember one day in our senior year, I was biting my pen and staring blankly at a table full of exercises. The faint sound of a song came from the radio, and the whole building began to stir. Edmund, who was sitting behind me, suddenly tapped my shoulder. "Effie Johnson, let's date." I turned around, looking confused. "What?" He stared at me nervously, enunciating every word. "I want to date you, I've wanted to for a long time." I looked at him in disbelief. It turns out that being confessed to by a secret admirer is like having countless scenes illuminated instantly. It's like fireworks blooming in your mind, falling into his eyes and turning into a sky full of stars. The voice from the radio grew louder and louder. "I once poured my youth into her, and once played the summer with my fingertips, let the heart follow its fate." I can even remember how Edmund looked at me so seriously and persistently. Everyone else ran out of the classroom, leaving only the two of us. I nodded blankly, then shook my head. I like having a doctor boyfriend. I'll take the exam. I can definitely get in." He excitedly took out the newly released mock exam rankings. Scores good enough for B City University. "Effie, you better not be lying to me." I watched his satisfied smile and turned around stiffly. My heart was about to jump out of my chest. Thump thump, thump thump. 18-year-old Edmund Williams gave up computer science to study medicine for Effie Johnson. 18-year-old Edmund Williams said that Effie Johnson would be the only factor in all his decisions. 18-year-old Edmund Williams visited every temple in H City, praying to Buddha that he could successfully confess to Effie Johnson. But the passionate heart of 18 doesn't seem to count at 25. I sat in Edmund's room. I picked up the tablet and opened his information page for the first time. I was still his pinned chat. The chat history was still from the afternoon. "Tomorrow I'll try to ask the director for a day off and personally pick up my little girlfriend. Actually, my flight was today. I intended to arrive early in H City to surprise him." Who knew there would be no surprise, only disappointment? I clicked on Yvonne Black's profile picture. Casually scrolling up. It turned out that their chat history had never been deleted, and it had been exactly 6 months until today. They chatted almost every day. "Today I heard that you didn't have breakfast, so I brought some snacks for you. Report to Dr. Edmund, the takeout arrived too quickly today. This place must use pre-made dishes. I brought coffee for Dr. Edmund. You're the buy one, get one free freebie. Ugh, thank goodness you were there last night. Otherwise, I wouldn't have known what to do. I'll treat Dr. Edmund to dinner after work today. Yvonne's to-do list. Remember to bring nut crisps for Dr. Edmund every day. Can't let my nurturing doctor go hungry. So Dr. Edmund's girlfriend is an art student, no wonder she's so good at dressing up. Unlike me, who can't even tell the difference between foundation and primer. I'm so dumb. From Edmund's initial refusals, to occasional replies, to eventually responding to every message. The birthday gift he prepared for me, he bought the exact same one for her. In all the time we were together, he took her to all the same places he took me. He refused to look at reports on his phone for anyone except me and Yvonne Black. They would talk late at night about a difficult patient or gossip about other departments. There were also many specialized emojis that I couldn't understand at all. As I scrolled, my hand unconsciously stopped on a certain day in mid-September. I was in New York with my mentor for a performance and was hospitalized with a high fever. Edmund stayed up with me all night despite the time difference. But that same night, he also kept that girl company. "Dr. Edmund, I just had a nightmare and can't sleep." "Are you asleep?" "No, I'm with my girlfriend." "Don't be mad. If you really can't sleep, I'll chat with you for a while." In that instant, my tears fell on the screen, unstoppable. I had never seen the cute and obedient emoji he sent to pacify her. The unusual calmness vanished completely. The person you thought had boundaries, a sense of propriety, and responsibility. His heart had long started to wander. Yvonne Black's profile picture suddenly jumped below mine. "Dr. Edmund, I'm feeling a bit dizzy. Can you come down and keep me company?" "Edmund, if you don't like me, why did you lead me on?" "I'm great too, I just met you a step too late." "Edmund, You're the first person I've ever pursued. I like you, I really like you, really, really like you. Stay with me for a while, just for a while. I won't bother you anymore after this. 3 minutes later. Okay. Edmund said okay. I calmly took out my phone and started him a video call. It was instantly declined. He quickly typed, "The director is still torturing me. I'll come back soon when I'm done." Come back? Can he still come back? I tiredly lifted my head and wiped away the tears that had long gone cold on my face. Probably because I didn't reply to him as usual. He sent me another message. The director approved my leave for tomorrow. Wait for me at the airport. Even if the dean comes, I'll make sure to accompany my little girlfriend well. I laughed. Putting down my phone, I packed up all my things one by one. The clock slowly pointed to 10 o'clock. 2 hours could pass so quickly. I stood at the door with my suitcase and sent Edmund one last message. Plans have changed, I can't come back. The journey between you and me is over. Edmund replied quickly. Where is my little girlfriend going on tour this time? How long will you be gone? I miss you so much. I tugged at the corner of my mouth and didn't reply. If he had been a little smarter and hid his betrayal better, maybe I would have always loved him, living in the happiness I liked. Unfortunately, he didn't hide it well. And I wouldn't endure it. Edmund Williams and Effie Johnson. Even the most compatible names, the most stunning beginning. In the end, they couldn't avoid a tragic end. Since he has fell for others, from now on, we will have nothing to do with each other, and nothing to do with love and romance. I dragged my suitcase to stand at Zelda's door. She was my college roommate, who vowed to be the maid of honor at my wedding with Edmund. At that time, Edmund was afraid that I would be pursued by others, so he arranged these roommates perfectly. Strategist Trisha, Chief of Staff Zelda, Pursuit Gunner Kala, with these three settled, my little girlfriend won't run away. Maybe the winter in H City is still too cold. It made my eyes red, and my nose red too. Zelda was slightly stunned, opened her mouth but didn't say anything. After washing up, I stood on the balcony wrapped in a cotton coat for a long time. Long enough for my face to freeze. I wiped my face and realized, why am I crying again? Clearly, I'm not the one who did something wrong. Zelda walked to my side, pretending to be relaxed, her gaze falling on the flower pot not far away. Is your camellia still there? I tugged at the corner of my mouth. It seems, it's already withered. Even I don't know which sunny and breezy day it died on. It was my favorite flower. At the high school graduation ceremony, a nervous boy held that bouquet of camellias and looked at me helplessly. The gilded admission letter in his hand was shining just like him. He said, "Effie, I got accepted." After a moment of silence, Zelda continued. You always believe what you believe, I won't persuade you. Persuade? Persuade to reconcile? But once people have a rift, they really can't get close again. No matter how you tie a broken string, there will always be a knot. Maybe some people can reconcile, but no one can pretend nothing happened and go back to the past. Reconciliation is easy, but being as before is too hard. I don't want to exhaust all my expectations before saying goodbye. For me, it's too embarrassing. Last night's all-night talk didn't blow me down, but it did blow Zelda down. I hurriedly sent her to the hospital, and after waiting for a long time, finally got her on an IV in the infusion room. Hurry, hurry, hurry! Don't you see we're all busy? The nurse looked young, but her temper wasn't small. I often heard that the worse the attitude of hospital staff, the higher the medical level. I nodded to show understanding, and softly said, I'm sorry, my friend is feeling unwell, please help. In fact, when I went to find her, she was still watching some astrology videos. She felt Zelda's arm for a while, then inserted the needle. Missed. Zelda hissed, couldn't help frowning, and became much more awake. The nurse impatiently switched to another hand, her tone even worse. Your veins are so thin, isn't it normal to miss? Even a 3-year-old kid next to you can endure more. I couldn't help but stand up. Zelda glanced at me, signaling to let it go. She didn't have the energy to argue now. After 3 attempts, Zelda finally got the IV. The nurse snorted coldly, expressionless as she took away the tourniquet. I stood up, wanting to adjust the drip speed. But I found the name on it wasn't Zelda's. Wrong medicine? I quickly called another passing nurse to confirm the medicine was wrong. Zelda stood up, barely holding herself together, her voice hoarse. Get your supervisor over here, I want to file a complaint. The same arrogant nurse from before came over again. She glanced at the medicine and sounded a bit annoyed. Aren't you fine? You're still standing here, aren't you? I looked at her. What kind of attitude is this? Is this how a medical professional should admit to such a big mistake? Despite my parents instilling in me the belief that harmony brings wealth and that suffering losses is a blessing since I was young, seeing her act so carelessly about someone else's health and being so self-righteous even after making a mistake. If we let this go, a new lump would surely form in the breast. How long have you been on the drip? We're already very busy, stop giving us. Zelda took out her phone, cutting off the nurse's rant. Can't understand human language, can you? I'll call the mayor's hotline directly. The nurse was visibly startled, biting her lip hard. She stubbornly refused to apologize, holding her head high. The people nearby couldn't stand watching anymore. This nurse has such a bad attitude. She wouldn't even answer when I asked a simple question. My child has been coming to the hospital for IVs these past few days and refuses to let this nurse give the injections. If it weren't for this hospital being close, who would come here? No wonder the doctor-patient relationship is so bad nowadays. One bad apple spoils the whole bunch. Seeing more and more people complaining, a timid nurse quickly spoke up. I'll go get Dr. Williams. Dr. Williams? I suddenly remembered that this was the hospital where Edmund Williams worked. In my hurry, I had the driver take me to the nearest hospital. So the Dr. Williams she mentioned. The standoff lasted just over half a minute before hurried footsteps sounded outside the infusion room. What's going on? Edmund walked in as if it was routine, unsurprisingly standing right in front of me. He was wearing the white coat I used to love, standing tall like a pine in the mountains. Even in the chaotic crowd, he maintained his usual calm demeanor. The moment he saw me, he noticeably paused. Effie. Dr. Williams, I seem to have caused trouble again. These two ladies insist on filing a complaint. The nurse was extremely aggrieved, her voice almost tearful. It was as if we were bullying her. Even without my glasses, I knew who this nurse was now. Zelda, still fuming, didn't hesitate to retort. Young lady, you stuck me 4 times and gave me the wrong IV, and you're the one who's upset? Do I need to lie on the ground before you'll listen? Edmund frowned slightly, looking at Zelda. Are you feeling unwell anywhere right now? I smirked, curious. Does your hospital define a medical accident as giving the wrong IV, or do you wait until something happens to the patient? Dr. Williams, why don't you enlighten us on what counts as feeling well and what doesn't? Does being in a bad mood count as unwell? Yvonne Black was getting anxious, pointing at Zelda. She's talking louder than I am, how could there be a problem? I sneered, not hesitating to question. Do you get to decide if there's a problem or not? Edmund frowned in silence for a moment, then turned to me. Let's arrange a checkup for Zelda first to see if there are any issues with her body. Then he turned to Yvonne, saying, You go out first, I'll apologize to the patients. He said he would apologize on her behalf. At this moment, when Edmund still thought I was his girlfriend. Who was she to him? And who was he to me? My boyfriend was going to apologize to me for another girl. How ridiculous! Yvonne sniffled as she pushed the door open and left. Edmund walked closer, wanting to pull me, but I raised my hand to block him. He stared at my hand for a while, then cautiously said, Didn't you say you had to continue performing? Why did you come back suddenly? I looked at him calmly. The smell of disinfectant in the hospital was too pungent, making my nose sting. The person standing in front of me was still him. Just yesterday, we had so many hopes and expectations for each other and for this relationship. But why did everything become unnecessary overnight? Edmund didn't mention what happened just now and acted as usual. As long as I was there, it seemed like I was all he could see. You must be very tired. I'll finish my shift soon. I tilted my head, pretending to be puzzled. Besides attending to surgeries, do hospital doctors also have to handle complaints for nurses? He hesitated for a few seconds, somewhat uncertain. Newcomers tend to make mistakes, just like your first performance. The worst that could happen with my performance is ticket refunds. Her mistakes could cost a life. Edmund, you are a doctor. This is your field. How can you not understand this better than I do? Edmund fell silent. A person as logically meticulous as him, how could he give such an untenable explanation? It's a bit chaotic here with so many people. Let's talk when we get back. I couldn't help but sigh. Is it really chaotic here, or is it your heart that's in chaos? Suddenly, the phone rang. It was Edmund's. The name Yvonne on the screen was particularly glaring. He frowned slightly and hung up the phone. A few seconds later, the ringtone started again. A trace of struggle flashed across Edmund's face, and he finally put away the phone. I'll go finish my shift first, and then we can go back together. I didn't say okay. Nor did I say no. I thought, never mind. In this relationship, Edmund could no longer bear anything from me. Be it good or bad, he no longer deserved it. When I received Yvonne's message, I was waiting at the airport. A picture popped up on my phone. She was leaning intimately on Edmund, smiling sweetly. Stop clinging to him. I'm more suitable for him than you are. Do you know we chat in the duty room from midnight till dawn? Do you know his favorite sleeping positions? Do you know how stressed he is? You can't be there to take care of him, but please don't stop others from doing so. I, Yvonne, will never be the other woman. My dignity doesn't allow it. Just look at who he was defending just now. I got him to leave with just one call. Let him go early, or no one will be happy in the end. I suddenly found it extremely ridiculous. I took a screenshot and opened my social media account. I posted it under the post where she was chasing her crush. You like stealing other people's boyfriends so much, I'll give him to you. The trending topic exploded instantly. Yvonne only knew I was an art student, but she didn't know I was an art student with tens of millions of fans worldwide. Didn't she want to be famous? Then let me help her. Besides, who would tolerate being openly cheated on and still swallow such humiliation? Within 5 minutes of posting the screenshot, my phone started vibrating incessantly. What are you doing? Are you crazy? I was joking. You can't ruin me just because you can't have him. I'm sorry. Can we talk? I'm begging you. You vicious woman. Dr. Williams would never like someone like you. At the same time, Edmund also sent me a message. He seemed unaware that things had already turned upside down outside. My little girlfriend, just wait for me 5 more minutes. I'll be done soon. I turned off my phone expressionlessly, got up, and walked into the boarding gate. The most ridiculous thing in the world is that I already knew the truth, yet he was still lying. Lying so sincerely, so deeply. I once told him I hoped we could always be honest with each other. Even if, like today, he wavered and hesitated. He could have just told me openly. Maybe we could have had a decent breakup. But unfortunately, he didn't tell the truth, couldn't resist temptation, and didn't cherish what he had. A fly in a bowl of rice isn't disgusting, what's disgusting is seeing it fallen with my own eyes. The plane taxied down the runway towards the predetermined flight path. Sunlight streamed through the window, casting dappled patterns on my body. I still remember the day of our college graduation trip. It was as beautiful a day as today. Edmund and I sat next to each other, and suddenly, I felt a bit of weight on my shoulder. He had stayed up several nights in a row to get a few days off, and he whispered softly in my ear. What you hold in your heart will eventually echo back to you. The Buddha didn't lie to me. Effie is mine, Effie will always be Edmund's. Back then, I wore headphones and pretended I didn't hear him. But the smile tugging at the corners of my mouth was unmistakable. I liked Edmund. I liked him a lot. But in just 3 years, I finally realized. A valley without an echo isn't worth leaping into, and a valley with endless echoes isn't worth it either. Edmund truly loved me. But it was also true that he accepted another girl's joys and sorrows. 7 years of feelings had changed. It was true that we could no longer walk towards a clear and certain future together. Fortunately, the truth and the lies have all ended. Edmund absent-mindedly finished handing over his shift. In reality, their handover only took about 10 minutes, but he spent over an hour. An hour of that time was spent comforting Yvonne. Over the past few years, due to their work, he and Effie had been together less and apart more. And Yvonne had always been by his side, caring for him and finding every excuse to show concern. Her feelings for him were passionate and forthright, making it difficult for him to reject her. Effie was good to him too, but because she wasn't around, no matter how considerate she would miss some details. However, he had never accepted Yvonne, and he had said that he already had someone he was going to marry. So he hadn't cheated. But for some reason, when he saw Effie today, he felt a bit guilty. He hadn't done anything inappropriate, just maintained and comforted a colleague. "Dr. Edmund, are you really going to draw a line with me?" Yvonne clutched his white coat, her eyes red like a fawn's. Edmund sighed softly. "Yvonne, the person you just saw was my girlfriend. I've told you before, I have a girlfriend. We're getting married soon, and I don't want her to misunderstand or be unhappy." "Aren't you afraid of making me unhappy?" Yvonne instinctively questioned. Suddenly realizing she had no right or status, she cried even harder. "I just like you, that's all. I just want to be good to you. I don't need anything else. Edmund, please don't push me away, okay?" Edmund glanced at his phone. There was still no message from Effie. He thought of her expression earlier, silently guessing that she must be angry. "I'm sorry." This time, Edmund didn't hesitate and forcefully pulled his coat back. Yvonne covered her face, unable to stop her tears. She couldn't understand why she wasn't better than Effie. She clearly had all the advantages, except she came a bit later. But what did that matter? Wasn't it true that the longer you were together, the less fresh it felt? They had been together for 7 years, they should have been tired of each other by now. She bit her lip and called out to Edmund, who was about to leave. "Edmund, can you hug me, just once, as a final wish for all I've done for you?" Edmund's hand gripped the doorknob, but he didn't press it down for a long time. The photo of their hug appeared vividly on Effie's phone. "Dr. Edmund, your heart is beating so fast. You feel for me." Edmund gently pushed her away. "Yvonne, let's end this here." When Edmund arrived at the infusion room, he found that Effie and Zelda had already left. He called Effie, but her phone was off. Then he called Zelda. "We went our separate ways, she should have gone back already." Edmund unconsciously breathed a sigh of relief. It was good that she went back, he thought she was angry. He drove to buy Effie's favorite cake and then stood in line to buy roasted poultry. Every time she came back, she loved to eat this. But when he opened the door to their home, he suddenly stopped in his tracks. The house, which had been full, now seemed to have a large empty space. The castle they built together was gone. The stuffed doll pillow Effie Johnson gave him that was on the sofa was gone. The photos on the wall, including their group photos and her solo photos, were gone. Even the camellia on the windowsill was gone. Effie? He knew very well that no one could respond to him. But he still didn't give up and tried to call out. The voice-activated lights in the corridor flickered, making Edmund's face look particularly grim. He shakily dialed that familiar number, calling over a dozen times, but the phone was still off. "Zelda, where do you think Effie went?" "She went back." "Back where? Make it clear." Edmund's voice suddenly became heavier, and all his calm composure collapsed at this moment. The other end of the phone was silent for 3 seconds, then laughed. "Of course, she went back to the United States. She has so many performances waiting for her." Edmund instinctively asked, "Why didn't you tell me earlier?" "Earlier? If you had finished your shift earlier and come to the infusion room, you could have heard it from her directly. If you had come to ask me earlier, you would have known. Our beloved Dr. Williams, it was you who dragged it out until now." Edmund didn't know how he hung up the phone. But deep in his subconscious, an endless despair arose. It seemed that he and Effie were done. Completely done. When he received Yvonne's call, he had just asked for 4 days off. He had almost bet everything on it. "Dr. Williams, what should we do? Effie is going to ruin both of us. I don't really care, but you've studied so hard for over 10 years and are Professor Brown's most valued student. Your efforts can't be wasted." Edmund opened the post she sent. The comments were filled with endless complaints and curses, already numbering in the tens of thousands. A casual search showed Yvonne's face paired with the word mistress. And because Edmund hadn't shown his face, he was beautifully hidden. But those who knew him would recognize him. So he couldn't stay hidden for long. But now Edmund didn't care about that, he only saw the top comment. It was a screenshot of a conversation. The comment ID was Effie's EW. The hand that originally held the scalpel trembled uncontrollably. He had helped Effie create that ID. Did she know? Did she know everything? She was Effie, who couldn't tolerate even a grain of sand in her eyes. "Dr. Williams?" Seeing no response from the other end of the phone, Yvonne couldn't help but call out again. "What do you want me to do?" Edmund's voice was incredibly calm, frighteningly calm. "Why not say that you and Effie broke up a long time ago, and I'm just pursuing you now? We're only together now." He closed his eyes tightly. "No, Effie wouldn't break up with me. And I won't break up with her." It was as if he hadn't heard Yvonne's words. He kept repeating that they wouldn't break up while putting down the phone. Until just before hanging up, Yvonne was still screaming hysterically on the other end. "You'll ruin us this way. Edmund, are you stupid? That vicious woman doesn't even love you." There was still a week left until the performance. The teacher was a bit surprised to see me return so quickly but understood instantly after a few questions. She gently strummed the pipa, and in the tranquil night, only the lingering sound remained. After finishing a piece, she slowly spoke. "In one's lifetime, there can be many hardships, and matters of the heart are one of them. But how can a mere gust of wind cause a mountain flood? Spring and autumn come and go, those who are meant to meet will eventually meet. You don't need to regret this, instead, you should learn to look forward to it. Look ahead, don't dwell on the past and dreams." I nodded. It's better to understand it yourself than to hear it from others. Just before the teacher came to find me, Yvonne updated her status. A statement explaining that she wasn't a homewrecker. She subtly implied that Edmund and I had been having relationship problems and had already broken up. Edmund didn't come forward to deny it to protect me, nor did he come forward to admit it to protect Yvonne. That was the best answer. During rehearsal, the senior sister gave me a surprised look. "Your playing style used to be quite obvious, but recently, there seems to be some emotional changes in your pieces." "Indeed, scumbags do affect our playing speed." "Exactly." "The line of people pursuing our junior sister stretches all the way to France. We'll screen them one by one for you." The senior sister affectionately patted my head. "Effie, if the Arctic Ocean and the Nile River can merge in the clouds, why can't the right people?" Holding the pipa, my nose suddenly tingled. "Move on, Effie Johnson. Even if the summer cicadas disappear in the autumn leaves, you should look forward to next summer." When Edmund appeared before me, I wasn't surprised. The performance time and venue could be easily found, there was no need to hide it from him. He wore very little and stood straight under the nearby plane tree. Snow fell on his shoulders, forming a thin layer. The atmosphere was stagnant, silent for a long time. I walked straight past him, heading towards the building. "Wait." Edmund's voice was deep, each word struck my heart. He said, "Effie, I'm sorry." I stopped and turned around. He slowly walked towards me, his gaze particularly earnest and affectionate. "I have always been rejecting her. I never crossed the line in this relationship, believe me." I slowly turned back, inexplicably finding it somewhat amusing. "Then why are you apologizing? If you think you did nothing wrong, why are you apologizing now?" His expression was somewhat flustered, as if he had never considered these questions himself. "No, it's not what you think. I was just acting out of colleague friendship." What kind of colleague friendship makes you prioritize sharing and confiding with her over your own girlfriend? When Yvonne called you to the hospital in the middle of the night because she was scared by a patient's bleeding. Did you consider that she is a professionally trained nurse with 4 years of systematic nursing education? Weren't there other doctors in the hospital during her shift? Why did everything have to be handled by you? If these were due to colleague friendship, what about after work? When her dog was sick, why did she call you to the pet hospital? While flipping through the chat records on the tablet, I was exceptionally clear-headed, matching every timeline precisely. When he and Yvonne took the dog to the pet hospital, I was standing at the gate of his school waiting for him. I sent him a message, Edmund, it suddenly started raining outside. And Yvonne's message came just half a minute after mine, she said. Thank you, Dr. Edmund, for accompanying me to the pet hospital. I'll treat you to dinner this weekend. You can't refuse me this time. That's when I realized the saddest part wasn't the rainy day. It was me hiding under the eaves alone, waiting for my boyfriend who was accompanying another girl. Edmund was completely flustered. With red eyes, he explained to me. It's because we spend so little time together and you feel insecure. I really just saw that she was a girl facing difficulties outside and helped her. He didn't understand what I meant. He even turned around and blamed me for my lack of trust and security. I tried hard to suppress my emotions, but I couldn't help bringing a sob into my voice. Edmund Williams, haven't I ever encountered problems I couldn't solve? Don't I have colleagues who share my interests and values? Aren't the temptations I face less than yours? But every time I encountered a problem I couldn't solve, I would tell Edmund first. Then it would be my teachers and my senior sisters. If I got locked out, I could find a locksmith myself. If I encountered a robbery after leaving the supermarket, I would hide and call the police myself. Even on the rainy days when the power went out, which I feared the most, I would wrap myself tightly in a blanket and try to comfort myself. What I can do, why can't you? And if you can't, is it really just because of the colleague relationship you mentioned? I don't know when the snow stopped, but it seemed like everything had quieted down. Edmund's eyes were frighteningly red. In my repeated questioning, he anxiously grabbed my hands. As if I would disappear in the next second. It's not like that, Effie. I know I was wrong, I really know I was wrong. I'm sorry, I'll change, I promise I'll change. I forcefully shook off his hands. Wrong is wrong, what's the point of saying sorry? Change what? There's no need to change, you're not a child anymore. Could you not tell right from wrong when you did it? If love is deep, behavior must be respectful. Don't give me ambiguous affection. Rather than holding a broken umbrella, it's better to get wet in the rain. In the following days, Edmund followed me everywhere. On the bus, on the subway, outside the rehearsal room, in the restaurant, he seemed to be trying very hard to win me back. If I closed the door, he would stand outside alone. He would only leave when all the lights in the room went out and then return to the hotel alone. But we both knew in our hearts. This relationship could never go back to what it was. Even if he knew he was wrong, even if he knelt in front of me and begged, I wouldn't feel sorry for him for even a second. On the day the hospital forced him to return to work, he waited for me outside all night. In the morning, when I opened the door, he looked up sharply. He was still holding the breakfast he bought for me. Steam was rising from it. He cried. It was the first time I saw Edmund cry. He sobbed, "Can you give me another chance? Don't just give me a death sentence." I took a tissue from my bag and stuffed it into his hand. My tone was unprecedentedly calm. "I gave it to you, Edmund. The last time I saw you at the hospital. If, during the time I was with Zelda for her IV drip, you had come back to explain. Or on the way to the airport, when I was stuck by the sudden snowstorm for a long time. You could have rushed to the airport to persuade me to change my mind. Maybe we could have tried to talk through all the problems. Maybe I would have hesitated for the 7 years of our relationship, for the 18-year-old you. But unfortunately, you didn't come. You claimed to be handing over your shift, which took almost 2 hours. In those 2 hours, you even comforted the deeply distressed Yvonne. But you forgot about me. I used to feel depressed because Edmund and I were often not in the same city, even across a country. But in the past few days, I suddenly understood. When two people's hearts are not together, even if they stand face to face, they are separated by mountains and seas. When we brushed past each other, Edmund's voice was almost as low as dust. Effie, I really want to go back to the past, back to when we first got together. Every day we can't go back to has its reason. Even if I could go back to the past, at the moment I met you, I would definitely turn around and leave without hesitation. By the time I returned home after the tour, nearly 5 months had passed since Edmund and I broke up. I went to the hospital to visit a sick friend, and I happened to run into him. He looked dazed, his whole demeanor lifeless. The once-spirited young man had lost all his luster. Or maybe, his brilliance was only captivating because of my affection. He walked up to me, suddenly looking a bit flustered. I watched every one of your performances. I nodded, thank you. Yvonne has resigned, and I interrupted him. I'm not interested in these things. If there's nothing else, I'll be leaving. Edmund was unwilling to give up, gripping my arm tightly. Let's start as friends again. I'll pursue you all over again, okay? I can spend another 3 or 5 years, it doesn't matter. I looked at him calmly. I heard everything that day in the private room. You said maybe, but unfortunately, there's no what if. He suddenly looked up at me, the last bit of struggle in his eyes finally extinguished. He walked slowly back to his office, like a living corpse. He couldn't possibly misunderstand what this meant. Love has never been a multiple-choice question. Even if I were the one chosen, I would rather not be. In the afternoon, Zelda invited me to go shopping. I enthusiastically put on exquisite makeup and stepped out in my heels. Seeing that I was in a good mood, Zelda talked even more than usual. That jerk, he had to mess things up like this. Now he's lost both love and career. I heard that Edmund had been in a bad state since our breakup. He made numerous clinical errors and lost interest in his research. Soon, he was replaced by others. This world has never lacked outstanding people, especially in a top-tier hospital full of talent. Zelda couldn't help but click her tongue and shook her head regretfully. If he continues like this, it'll be hard for him to stay at the hospital. I took a bite of ice cream, my tone indifferent. These are all his own choices. Zelda seemed to remember something and suddenly laughed. That Yvonne Black actually dared to challenge you. She must not know you have the chat records. I smiled and shook my head. She knows. She's just betting that I wouldn't dare to expose them. After Edmund and I broke up, Yvonne came to see me. She just said things like how I met Edmund at the best time and I was just luckier than her. But I could never tell a girl who only knows how to spend all her energy on a man. I was loved because I was good. Because I was worth it. With or without Edmund, I am still me. I will shine when it's time to shine, and I will be loved when it's time to be loved. Maybe my indifference made her restless. Maybe Edmund not choosing to be with her after breaking up with me drove her completely hysterical. She went crazy on social media, slandering me, saying I clung to Edmund and even threatened him with self-harm to prevent the breakup. She also said I brought friends to the hospital to make things difficult for her, trying to force her to death. The onlookers who love drama stirred things up, even taking it to our orchestra's official website. They questioned my character, my abilities, and accused the orchestra of neglecting the discipline of its members. I countered by posting all the chat records between her and Edmund online. Not a single word was left out. Whether it was so-called colleague friendship or silent transgression, people would naturally discern. Not only would they discern, but they would also dig deeper. Yvonne's qualifications were insufficient to stay at the hospital, and she hadn't even taken the recruitment exam. People followed the clues and found the person behind the manipulation. A high-ranking leader at the hospital. The netizens who caused a ruckus on our orchestra's website flocked to the hospital's website, launching a massive outcry. Yvonne lost her job, and the hospital's leadership underwent a major overhaul. Edmund found it even more difficult to stay at the hospital. Are you leaving again next month? When will you find the right person at this rate? Zelda looked at me with interest. I heard there's a long line of people chasing you, all the way to France. Isn't there anyone you like? I smiled sweetly. Putting aside love and marriage, wholeheartedly spreading our nation's excellent traditional culture. Marriage and love have never been necessities for me. If they come, they come. If they don't, I don't have to settle or force it. Things should not be constrained by other things. Rather than being each other's world, it's better to be a universe unto oneself.